waste less food, feed the hungry, and compost the rest.
My apologies, I had the incorrect order set up. 1 minute and I will get the next one.
No problem.
Great, I'll go ahead and start speaking. Thanks everyone, and this is a nice segue as we've talked a bit about outside packaging. Now we're going to move into the food that comes in a lot of those packages. So I started on a journey of re-looking at how food is distributed locally. I was interested in some of the things that were happening in the county. You can go to the second slide, please, thanks. And one of the numbers that struck me, I saw this first on the Drawdown website, is that 30 to 40% of food is wasted. And it depends on how you look at it nationally, locally. It's a lot of food that gets wasted. That food is filling up the landfills in many cases because it's not actually being composted. That's creating greenhouse gas emissions when it could be turned into fuel. And even more valuably, it could be helping feed the hungry. Next slide. There were several other sort of gut punch moments that I had during my journey. The biggest one is that 1 in 5 people are food insecure in Marin. And frankly, with some work I've been doing recently, it's even higher. The lines right now at the food banks are really long because of the pandemic. But several of these other factors have also helped drive my work. If we were to compost this food and get it on the land across California, it is possible if you took a look at all of the land in California and only put compost on about half of it, you could offset the greenhouse gas emissions of all buildings, commercial buildings, and all residential buildings, just by letting the land absorb, this newly composted land absorb more of the CO2. There's also ways like the Central Marin Sanitation Agency Food to Energy program of turning food waste into renewable energy. They sell their energy back to MCE in terms of as a renewable source. We can help reduce the fact that the landfills are running out of space and need to have some changes. And we can, by doing a lot of this composting, right now about 20 to 30% of the green waste is actually going into the landfill because people are just not getting food waste into the landfill. It's getting thrown in the garbage. If we change some of the composting methods, we can also do even better composting. The CASP is a covered aerated static pile, and that actually reduces the greenhouse gas emissions significantly by 85%. Next slide. So I started on a journey which coincided well with the EFM programs. I've been attending the Marin Food Policy Councils, which is a monthly meeting that brings together a lot of local organizations in the community that work on food access issues. They were getting to the end of their 2019 year and were looking at their mission, their members, and how they could work more effectively together. So I led some interactive workshops with them and helped them do a summary of their accomplishments in 2019, and then also help set up their plans for 2020. In collaboration with that, I did some interviews with all of their members to talk about their own missions and how those align. I've also been working with Drawdown Marin. They have a local food and food waste program, or part of Drawdown Marin, and I'm on a team that's looking at compost and how we can do better at composting across the county. This included a field trip to the Napa composting facility where they are doing CASP composting. And also I did a series of waste hauler interviews to talk with all of the local haulers. And now I've actually been helping with some tracking of emergency food access during the pandemic. Next slide. So I've been very active. This is one example of one of the products that I've developed. If you click through, the next one is these are the goals of the Food Policy Council to looking at how we can get food access more appropriate in the county. The next click is the food stream and how it, looking at the whole food supply chain. And then next is the number of organizations. As you can see, it's a lot of organizations and they all have lots of different initiatives, looking at school lunch programs, food redistribution, and climate-focused initiatives. So this is something that they're looking to put up on their website. Next slide. The challenges of all of this work is that there's lots of players, hard to find the money, lots of complexity around the regulations with food safety, with Air Resource Board, and so forth. And also just making sure that people are aware of the issues. The garbage haulers all have a very official term. They call it the ick factor, that they says is their biggest hurdle, that people just don't want to compost. And so they're really amazing people who are really trying to do good work, but have these challenges. That said, there's some new regulations that are coming out that have lots of opportunity for making changes to waste regulations in terms of green waste diversion, lots of engagement, collective impact goals, and local solutions. And I have one last slide and that will hold up while we have any questions. These are things you personally can do to help stop food waste. First off is buy more efficiently. All of us who are not going to the grocery store as often are probably thinking a lot about food waste because you don't want to waste it if you can't go and buy it easily. So really use this opportunity to reduce your own food waste. Support hunger. Can you leave those questions up, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Make sure that you're supporting local food distribution, extrafood.org and the food bank.
Whoops.
Avoid the toss by date on labeling. Don't just assume that something has a best by date, that it is should be tossed. Making your own compost. Everything that is food can go in your green bin. In most of the local locations, people are still putting that down the disposal into the garbage. Use the green bin because that's what West Marin and Earth Care use to make the good compost. Improve the land and buy local. So please help reduce food waste, and let's make sure that we can get better food access to those people who are right now standing in line for food banks, many of them lining up at 9 o'clock for a 2:30 food drop. It's pretty heartbreaking.
Thank you, Wendy. Tremendous recommendations on actions people can take immediately that can make a difference. We do not have questions at this time. Several compliments for you on the breadth and scope of your presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if anyone, we have 3 minutes, I think. So if anyone still wants to just pop off mute instead of typing, I'm happy to take verbal questions too.
We don't have questions at this time for you, but several people will continue the conversation with you. Altogether, the plastics systems analysis and layering of all your presentations has been tremendous. Thank you. Why don't we move forward then with our next presenters, who are Lori Gottlieb and Angie Rotrock with Don't Sell Out.
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So two things. One, with Kim's permission, we're going to take a few more minutes than 5 minutes because there's two of us. And the second thing is Angie, who is a doctor and who has morphed into the house call abilities of her practice, had an emergency patient call this morning. So she's very sorry she can't be with us. I hope she'd be back by now, but she's not. And I'm going to do my best to do her part of the presentation this morning. So let's just jump into this. Next slide, please. First slide, I should say. There we go. So just the outline of what I'm going to talk about this morning is contextually, why should we be concerned about cellular radiation and this 5G rollout we're hearing about and reading about? Is this 5G rollout a done deal? Go over our project and the process that we employed. And then similar to Wendy and other participants, what can you do on the ground to mitigate your own exposure, your family's exposure to cellular radiation? Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about this in our short talks in San Rafael that morning, but I think it's worth just quickly reviewing again. Why do we care about this issue of cellular radiation in 5G? We can't see this, smell it, touch it, feel it. So we have to educate ourselves on why this is even an issue and all. And I think the most compelling point about that is that the WHO, the World Health Organization, has defined EMFs, or electromagnetic frequencies, as a possible carcinogen. Many think it should be a probable, but you should know that possible carcinogen is the same category as lead and gasoline fumes. And obviously you wouldn't put these things on your pillow or on your bedstand next to you at night. So why would you put your cell phone next to your head? We learned this in the process. This is really interesting and good progress, is that insurance companies, health insurance companies, now recognize electromagnetic sensitivity as a medical condition, an official one, and it even has one of these official ICD codes. So this is a billable code that you can specify a medical diagnosis when someone is electromagnetic sensitive. Next is even this, not next slide, next point, sorry. Even cell phone companies in their manuals do warn that you shouldn't hold these devices next to your head or close to the body. It's just buried so deep in the verbiage and no one advertises it. So of course we don't know about it. The effects of EMF exposure on the body is cumulative. So most of you are probably wondering, well, I don't feel anything. This isn't bothering me. Well, over time, and if you have like a pre-existing long-term condition, you do experience things. It's just, again, something you can't see or necessarily feel immediately. But there are things happening according to scientists and studies, if you read those things. DNA damage, decreased melatonin, which we use to put our bodies to sleep at night, oxidative stress, all these are basically stressors on our body. And the symptoms are pretty vast, a little vague even. So if you have something and a doctor can't help you, maybe you should consider that EMFs are possibly causing some of these issues. Anxiety, depression, irritability, headaches, ringing in your ears, even bodily pain. EMFs make these conditions worse. And I think the most important point is, by being a stressor on the body, it compromises our immune system, which brings me to my last point on this page. This is something that I think really needs to be studied. And when I read it the first time, I had to read it and hear it several times until I actually believed it. But Wuhan, China, obviously in the news every single day, Wuhan, China rolled out 10,000 of these 5G cell towers in October, part in October and part in December. It's considered the biggest 5G hotspot in the world, alongside Kirkland, Washington, also in the news, and Evergreen Hospital, where those patients died. Kirkland is considered to be a model for 5G and one of the first rollouts in the country. And Evergreen Hospital also supposed to be one of the 5G, the most 5G advanced hospital in our country. Milan as well, where we saw that in Italy going on, considered to be the 5G hotspot in Europe. So
Wuhan, China,
if you could go back to the slide.
Washington, and some others are the 5G hotspots in their countries.
Yes.
They just rolled it out.
If you could please mute your audio until we're done with the presentation.
And I'm sorry, if you can go back.
Kathy.
Sorry.
If you
No
can
worries.
go back to the previous slide.
This one?
Yeah, just about done there. So
Thank you. Sorry about that.
yeah, no problem. So I just think we all need to think about this, and it needs to be researched. Is there a connection between these hotspots and the coronavirus? Not that it's the cause, that EMFs or 5G is the cause, but that it exacerbates the illness. It creates a compromised immune system that allows viruses to thrive. That's what we believe. That's what professionals like my wife in the holistic health community are talking about. It's all the buzz. Is there a connection? I think it's a question worth investigating. Next slide, please. So this 5G rollout, is it a done deal? The answer is like yes and no. The problem when you go talk to any city official is that the FCC has enacted such restrictive legislation that they've taken most of the power away from the local municipalities. So our cities, our mayors, our counties, their hands are tied and they can only do so much. It's a very sad situation. However, not all hope is lost, because local municipalities can enact dozens of clauses in ordinances to protect us. They can monitor, they can basically use the bureaucracy to disincentivize cell phone companies from installing their antennas. And Marin in general has done a pretty good job at that. But other cities are just ignoring it or ignoring the protests. And it's very disheartening to see. But their hands are tied, in all fairness. There are examples of a couple heroes in the United States. Some small towns like the New Hampshire Town Council of Keene actually put a ban on 5G. That's a very risky thing for a small town to do, because you know that these wireless companies are going to go in and eventually sue them, and small towns obviously don't have the means to fight those lawsuits. The state of Michigan, as an example, introduced a no-fee smart meter opt-out bill. In Marin, by the way, you can opt out of your smart meter, which causes a lot of wireless radiation in the home. And it's a small fee, but Michigan, it looks like they're going to get this passed. And I suppose the good news, and there's always, good news, glass half full, is that Marin County has joined forces with other municipalities around the country to sue the FCC so that they have more rights, and that they can really hopefully launch a fight so that each town can consider whether they want 5G or not. Next slide, please. So our project was intense on legal things. We basically went through all of the 11 incorporated cities and the Marin County ordinances. Marin County, by the way, some of you may not know, governs all 16 unincorporated communities in Marin. So we looked at 12 of these ordinances and did the best we could. And we decided, well, now we have this information, we've reviewed this, what do we do with all this information? And we decided to rate each of these ordinances based on objective criteria. There's probably dozens. I mean, literally, we counted 48 criteria that you could come up with for rating them. How far is this away from a playground? How is this allowed in a senior center? I mean, you could go on and on and on, but we thought these were the 5 that people would care about the most. And so the first one was, do they have an ordinance? Is there a draft? Is there nothing, or is there something approved? So we assigned a point or 2 points or 3 points for each. Is there a prohibition in schools, playgrounds, childcare centers, health and elder care facilities, and residential areas? Obviously, people want to know if these 5G cell towers are near them. And how close are they to their homes and their kids and the seniors? And then that there would be ongoing monitoring of the radiation levels by an independent expert in each of these ordinances. And finally, is the public warned that one of these is going up, blasting 5G radiation into your child's bedroom? We think people would want to know those kinds of things. And just to cut to the bottom line, the most protective ordinance based on our objective rating system was Fairfax. And it's very interesting, just anecdotally, we reached out to all of the mayors. We went right to the top. We thought, what do we have to lose? And there was one mayor in Marin County who met with us, and that was Renee Goddard of Fairfax. So it's no surprise. Renee did a lot of research. She met with very well-informed people to understand the scientific studies about the harmful effects of this, and legally what a city could do. Legally, I think Fairfax, really put itself out there as a model ordinance and did as most of these criteria as they could without putting the city in sort of legal jeopardy. So, applause for Fairfax. They did an incredible job. Next slide, please.
Lori?
Yes.
Excuse me, but you're into your 12th minute.
Thank you.
I suggest you wrap up your thoughts. We do not have questions at this time, so take just a minute or two to complete your presentation, please.
Thank you, Norma.
And go Fairfax.
Yeah, go Fairfax. So quickly, what can you do? Turn your phones on airplane mode off at night. at the very least, turn your kids' phones off. Next slide. Unplug your other Wi-Fi devices. You don't need Alexa at night. She can go to sleep too. Next slide. Keep the Wi-Fi devices away from your body as much as possible. There are plenty of studies about girls putting cell phones in their bras connected to breast cancer and boys in their pockets with testicular cancer. Keep it away, turn it, at least try and get your kids and yourselves to put things on airplane mode. If you're going to carry it in your pocket, carry it in your back pocket. Next slide. This is maybe the most important thing you guys can do. This is a meter. This makes the invisible visible. Angie and I, we actually carry one in our car, and it only costs a couple $100. And I want you just to see, as my last point, this is, we held it up, and you can see the different levels: slight, concern, moderate, high, and extreme. We held it up to our ecobee, which is like a Nest, which is a wireless device. And slight concern is 0 to 10. You can see what our ecobee puts out: 399,000. Those are microwatts per square meter. That's insane. And then I want you to see on the right side, the photo is on our bed pillow. The most important thing you can do is turn off all your devices, turn off your Wi-Fi at night when you go to sleep, because that's when your body does rest and repair. And you can see where we're at, 4. That's what it should be, folks. It should be green, it should be low, so that your body isn't subject to this radiation. Next slide, please. And just, these are guidelines that scientists put out there for what is considered slight concern to extreme concern. And again, your bed should be less than 10, and your wireless devices are going to be emitting just huge amounts that if you're subject to that all day long between your laptop, your phone, your Nest, your Alexa, it's too much, and you're subjecting yourself to risk. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And we can make these available to everyone, so you can, we can send you individual slide decks and you'll be able to see them online. Our next presenter, I'm sorry, Dr. Angie couldn't join us.
Sorry about that.
But we will move on with Betsy Crawford, teaching rights of nature.
Hi, sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting myself. And I will start that. Okay, so first I want to say the presentations have been amazing. I'm absolutely loving this. So my project is developing a curriculum to teach about rights of nature. And so I'm going to start with what I mean when I use the expression rights of nature. It means that natural forms, rivers, mountains, jaguars, butterflies, ecosystems, would have standing in court, meaning that nature herself could go to court and through a guardian sue for, quote, the right to exist, persist, and maintain and regenerate its vital cycles, structure, functions, and its evolutionary processes. That's from the 2008 Ecuadorian Constitution. The process of granting such rights has begun. Next slide. For example, in New Zealand, both Mount Taranaki and the next slide, please, and the Wanganui River now have what we still unfortunately call personhood rights. Next slide, please. All of Bangladesh's rivers are now protected this way. But this is a relatively new and little understood concept, even among environmentalists. We need a curriculum to explain the ideas and issues underlying rights of nature to the public, and that's what I've been developing. Next slide, please. There's a lot of potential material to cover. The history of legal rights, what's happening now, and what it will mean to change the paradigm by granting rights to nature. And each of these obviously has, I mean, this is just the beginning of my mind mapping. So each of these has, endless ramifications. Next slide, please. I'm thinking in terms of developing 3 different time frames: a 20 to 40 minute talk, a 1-hour presentation, and a 2-hour class. So the 20 to 40 minute or the pink tags. The 1 hour presentation would include the pink and the purple tags. And then the 2 hour presentation includes all of it. And then I'm now working on the 2 hour presentation with the idea that it can be whittled down to suit other circumstances. Right now, we're at the point where few people know what rights of nature means, or that it's beginning to happen in many places in the world. So the primary purpose is to explain the concepts and how they are being implemented. Allied with this is the desire to imbue participants with the passion for the goal of moving our legal system to include rights for nature. I have a mentor in this project. Tracy Apple is the head of curriculum development for the Pachamama Alliance, and I've loved participating in Pachamama programs. Tracy said something that I think is of paramount importance. Our aim is not to fill people's heads with a list of facts, but to make our case emotionally irresistible. In Pachamama workshops and classes, this is never done by nonstop talk. Instead, there's a variety of presentation, participation, visual stimulation, meditation, audience interaction. There's art, music, and video. Fun is important, along with the utter seriousness of the issues at hand. The presenters are people who, as Tracy says, embody the issues they care so much about. So that means that their inner activation is transferred to the audience. All this ends by not only educating people, but also by inspiring them to go out and embody the issue themselves. Next slide, please. So here are possible curriculum elements or examples, because there are any number of curriculum elements. Video and animation, presentation and information, writing and journaling, meditation and reflection, which could be done together, small group and whole group interactions, art, poetry, and music, and visuals like photographs, maps, and charts. There's, of course, no shortage of information. I mean, we're starting with 2,000 years of legal property rights from ancient Rome, set down in ancient Rome. So the challenge is to choose how to present it. Next slide, please. So which of those elements that were in the previous slide can be used to convey which of these issues from our earlier slide? Then we can begin to slot them into an agenda, which may look like this. Next slide, please. So obviously there would be welcome and introductions. Tracy recommended a meditation connecting people to an experience with nature that spoke deeply to them, so that through this meditation, you are already in a different frame of mind from coming to learn facts. And then a vision, an overview of what's at stake, what's possible, how we got here. And again, she recommended that when I work on how we got here, that I go back to what was once whole and complete, so that our ancient and present indigenous wisdom, which we have in our bones, it was not long ago that we were all indigenous, where we saw natural forms as equal participants in life on Earth. And then that thinking, which was overcome by Western concepts of property rights, which we are struggling with, in spades today. So then, moving then into the case for the legal rights of nature and what started to shift, what's happening that's making that shift, and the progress that we've made. And among the most important things in this is the power that shifting this paradigm is going to unleash. Because once we begin to look at nature as equal participants on this earth and deserving of equal rights with us, with humans, our perceptions and actions are going to change dramatically. And then, as leaving before the closing, what can people do to further this action, to further this cause? So the idea is to present important information in ways that are emotionally engaging and ultimately unforgettable. That's the most important to me, to inspire participation to further this very new and very important paradigm.
Betsy, your time was up a while ago, but it's such a fascinating subject, and we did not have we did not have questions, but we've had some tremendous comments about how important this topic is and how it can help mitigating